I know, yesterday or 2 days ago I said that the Calder was really the only award at the NHL Awards that I cared about. You knew Igor was going to win the Vezina, you knew it would have been Igor or Matthews that won the Hart. You had a conversation going on about the Norris, but I just didn't really care about anything aside the Calder. Despite that though, I'm making this video to go over some of the Maple Leafs things that happened during the entire voting process. Obviously the Ted Lindsay isn't involved here because the players being the ones that decide that award makes it so that the voting process isn't publicly released. And besides, there's like 700 NHL players anyway, or whatever the heck the number is, I don't know. So it's a little bit more difficult to track down the Lindsay voting numbers, but when it comes to the two awards that had Toronto Maple Leaf nominations, there's been a pretty interesting conversation going around as to which members of the Professional Hockey Writers Association put the Maple Leafs players higher up on their ballots and who have them lower. Obviously, we're opening up the conversation about Auston Matthews. He was this year's Rocket Richard winner. He scored 60 goals. He had 50 goals in a span of his own personal 50 games. He was the MVP as voted by the Writers Association and by the players themselves, so he won the Hart and the Lindsay. We also had Michael Bunting, who was nominated for the Calder. He was actually the third place finisher in the votes, but he was there nonetheless. Before we go over onto the Reddit post that I wanted to highlight here, let's go over Auston Matthews and the Hart Trophy voting breakdown as posted by a lot of people. It's kind of just a public list, so it doesn't really matter who posted it. But Auston Matthews was first in Hart voting with 1,630 votes. He had 119 first place votes, 49 second place votes, 15 third, 6 fourth place votes, and 4 fifth place votes. Connor McDavid did not have a similar amount of first-place votes. He only had 29. He had a lot of second-place votes, though, and you can see how everything follows through. Igor Shesterkin had 24 first-place votes, 26 second-place votes, 41 third-place votes, 29 fourth-place votes, and 24 fifth-place votes. These were your top three, but Auston Matthews was the majority winner. You could go out there and say, okay, it's deserved, he had the 50 goals in 50 games, his own personal 50 games, by the way, he had 60 goals on the year, etc., but there were still some people in the media that voted for Matthews as their fourth or fifth Hart candidate. And this post on the Maple Leaf subreddit goes over everybody who did so. If you didn't know, the voters list is actually released to the public a few hours after the actual event ends. In this case, it was released yesterday morning. Frank Saravelli made the tweet, hey, here's all the Writers Association people and here's all of their ballots, so this is who voted for whom. This post by King Lochner 16 on the Maple Leaf subreddit talks about who voted for Auston Matthews fourth on their Hart ballot, fifth on their Hart ballot, and who didn't even include Matthews on their Hart ballot in general. Needless to say, there's been a conversation starting up about bias because of the names listed. Here are the people who put Auston Matthews fourth on their Hart ballot. You have Pat Hickey, who works for the Montreal Gazette, Jean-François Chaumont, who works for Le Journal de Montréal, Arpon Basu, who is the Canadiens writer for The Athletic, Wayne Fish is a personnel for Bucks County Counter-Times, Gemma Karsten-Smith works for the Canadian Press, and you have Ben Kuzma, who works for the Providence here in Vancouver. Now, that should say the province, not the Providence, they're not the same word. But it's kind of easy to see where everything goes on over here. Okay, you got 3 Montreal guys, you've got a Vancouver guy putting Auston Matthews fourth overall on their ballot. If you go over to who has Matthews fifth on their ballot, you have Simon Olivier, who is working for La Presse, also French. Mark Spector is the Edmonton reporter in Sportsnet. And then you have Sheng Pang, who writes for Fear the Fin, which is the San Jose Hockey Now version of those websites, so he is a California person. There are some people as well who left Matthews off their Hart ballot entirely. You have Seth Roboroff from Pittsburgh Tribune Review and Guillaume Lefrançois, who also writes for the Press, or La Presse. It's interesting to note how the majority of the people here are from Quebec. They are French-speaking, they are French-writing, and then you have the few other people sprinkled in here, Ben Kuzma from Vancouver, Mark Spector from Edmonton, and Sheng Pang from San Jose, not to mention Seth from Pittsburgh. But it is kind of interesting just to note the varied locations of these voters. Obviously, people are entitled to their own opinions. It's just kind of funny how some of these opinions seem to align in certain geographical parts of the continent, and it gets even more interesting when you acknowledge the Calder voting as well. Moritz Seider won the Calder this season, and Michael Bunting, the Maple Leafs player that was nominated for the award, was third overall in overall votes. Moritz Seider had 170 first-place votes in comparison to Trevor Zegras, who had 15, and Michael Bunting, who had 7. You have Raymond, who had 1, Swayman, who had 2, and then nobody else had a first-place vote. Seider, for all intents and purposes, won by a landslide, and the majority of people said it was Seider and then Zegras, and then you had some people who said Bunting, others said Raymond, and everybody else. Michael Bunting, though, had 7 first-place votes, 51 second-place votes, 65 third-place votes, 34 fourth-place votes, and 23 fifth-place votes. This same Reddit post goes over in the comments who exactly it was that had Michael Bunting, the top scorer amongst all the rookies, as their first-place player. And the results might actually shock you as to who they are. These are the 7 dastardly members of the biased Toronto media who voted for Bunting first. You have Wayne Fish, who works for Bucks County Courier in Pennsylvania, Josh Yohei, who is the Pens beat writer for The Athletic, Scott Powers is the senior Blackhawks writer for The Athletic, Michael Russo is a Wild beat writer in Minnesota. He also writes for The Athletic. You have Dave Campbell, the Associated Press, based in Minneapolis, Jeremy Rutherford, who is the Blues writer for The Athletic, and Tom Timmerman, who writes for St. Louis as well, also The Athletic. This is really interesting to me, because when you talk about, oh, who the heck is voting Michael Bunting on their Calder list? How could you say he had the quote-unquote best or most proficient rookie campaign amongst all the other NHL first-year eligibles? Because Seider was a shutdown beast, he was physical, he was big, he could score points, he was playing on a bad Red Wings team, he was the best defenseman already. Meanwhile, Michael Bunting was pretty much the Hyman replacement, playing with Matthews, playing with Marner. He had some really elite talent at his disposal, and he was going out there cleaning up all their garbage in front of the net. That's why he scored all the points that he did, right? Plus the fact that Bunting barely was even eligible for the award anyway. He's 26 years old. He's got grandchildren that are getting drafted into the NHL next year. That was a joke, by the way. But even though all that may be true, Michael Bunting still was a very good player. He did make the players around him better. The advanced analytics back that up. And he was the leading point scorer amongst all the rookies, which, if you're looking at previous Calder winners, it's pretty much just been a points race, so I could understand why you would default to that kind of argument. It's just very interesting to me how nobody in Toronto actually had Bunting as their first place guy. Everybody here is from the States. Nobody actually from Canada had Bunting first on their ballot. Pennsylvania, Chicago, Wild, Minnesota, St. Louis, they're all kind of just in that area of the States. So, biases aside, this year's NHL voting, especially for the Maple Leafs guys, was pretty intriguing. Just to see that the ones that didn't have Matthews in their top 3 were all from Quebec or Vancouver or Edmonton or San Jose. Nobody in Toronto went out there and had Matthews outside their top 3, at least according to this. I mean, Gemma Karsten-Smith works for the Canadian Press, and that just kind of covers the entire country, so I'm not going to count that. But for Michael Bunting and the voting that he got, it's very interesting that he got only 7 first-place votes. I actually thought he would have gotten more based off of the media hype that this guy was going out there and receiving. But it's even more intriguing to me that nobody from Toronto voted him first on their ballot specifically. Those votes could have been distributed elsewhere. Hey, you have Trevor Zegras with 15 first-place votes, but again, Moritz Seider had 170, so a pretty big landslide victory for him. Very similar to Elias Pettersson when he took the Calder from Jordan Binnington in 2019. But either way, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Matthews and Bunting conversation on the awards voting, etc. Do you think there's a bias here? Do you think there should be more conversations going around about who voted for whom? I definitely had a fun time making this video, so we might be able to find a few more similarities in people who voted for certain players where and when. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Matthews winning the Richard, the Lindsay, the Hart, Michael Bunting finishing 3rd for the Calder, and everything in between. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.